People living, working, or just got something to say about ADHD.
So we were talking a little bit before that we, as the Jewish people, are stiff-necked, meaning that we have holy chutzpah. We're the stiff-necked people. And when it comes to struggling with ADHD, right? You yourself don't have ADHD, but you have a job in which you work with people who do have ADHD, correct?
Definitely.
So what would you say, like, from your experience working with these type of people, how do you be stubborn, right? How do you be stubborn in a way that you don't have to rely on medication, that you don't have to rely on pharmaceutical drugs, that you can use resources around you, whether it's music or being in nature, even like steigen a beautiful Torah, you know? Well, what would you suggest?
So I think the best way to really hold attention, if there's attention deficit, the best way to hold attention, first and foremost, is to make the space really enjoyable.
Right.
Really enjoyable. Because if the space is not warm and welcoming and wonderful, there's always going to be that antsy feeling, I want to be out of here already, even for people that don't have ADHD.
Right.
Get me out of here. First and foremost, the space has to really suit the soul.
Right.
And some things that generally speak to almost every human I've ever met is every human's touched by music, right?
Right.
Now, not necessarily could every human sit through a 3-hour class. I know I would struggle to sit through a 3-hour class. But we've all been to a 3-hour concert.
Right.
With having the time of our lives.
Jamming out.
No problem, jamming and involved and feeling and grooving. So we clearly see that music has this capacity to actually transcend the critical factor of the brain of whether I want to be involved and not be involved. Just be like, yeah, I'm here and I'm flowing with. And there's an unbelievable power of music that it doesn't just talk to the brain, it talks to the brain, to the heart, to the body, to the blood, to the soul.
Would you say that when it comes to music, that each person needs to find their frequency, that some music may not actually help your ADHD, it may actually drive you nuts, but once you tap into that right frequency, then it can help you focus more, it can help you elevate.
Totally. We all got different souls. We all have beautiful, unique, amazing souls. And there's unbelievable music that is the pen of the soul that will speak to each individual.
Mm-hmm.
For example, some people like a nice classical ballad. Some people like funky folk. Some people like psychedelic rock. Everyone has their thing.
I think sometimes that people fall into a frequency because of peer pressure, and it's not their frequency. They get stuck in a type of genre, right, that their friends are into, but it's not true to their soul.
Totally. When you find your sound, when you find your people, as we said, it doesn't just hit in one place. Because in one regard, like I could like a song because it makes me feel warm and fuzzy, or because the music is technically cool in my brain. But when you find your music, it hits on every dimension of the being. And what could be better for those that struggle with attention to have attention drawn not just from your brain, attention to something, but from your brain and from your body and from your soul and from your heart. Your full being is involved. So much easier to be present throughout that experience.
Right.
That's why we could be present at concerts. That's why for a lot of us being in nature has an incredible calming effect and allows us to be present, is because nature as well. In nature, we're often moving our body.
Mm-hmm.
Not just often just stationary nature. You're moving, you're walking, you're hiking, you're exploring. So there's movement. It speaks to our natural sensibilities as a human being.
Right.
Where do apples come from?
Trees.
Apple trees. Where do earthlings come from?
Where do what come from?
Earthlings.
The ground.
Earth. And when we connect back to the earth, it's really a deep remembering. And I've worked with a lot of students over the past year. Unfortunately, so many of them have been on medication. Now, for those that need it, you need it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here on a crusade against the medical Western establishment.
I might be. But...
That's not what this interview is about, right? But we could do that one. But essentially, if you need it, you need it. I'm not saying not, but if we created opportunities for our students to thrive, places that were warm and welcoming and loving and exciting, places that had music and nature and creativity and art, places that had warm smiles and friendly people, we wouldn't feel this need to be distracted so quickly. We might actually be able to pay attention because it's a world and a reality in a society that warmly invites our attention, that engages us, that makes us excited to look.
I'll add on to that. I think before we can even get into music or even get into nature, right, that we have to be able to teach a person how to be authentic, right? How to connect to their authentic selves. Because if you're not able to connect to that authenticity, you're going to feel extremely uncomfortable in nature. You're going to feel awkward in your own skin. So to get to that place, right, where I'm able to move in nature and walk barefoot on the grass and jam out in a drum circle, I have to see my self-worth to some extent. I have to be able to love myself to some extent.
Totally. But if you do not, nature is an incredible container for you to go on that journey.
To start that.
For you, right. It will highlight the fact that, whoa, my life that I have been living has been a bunch of individual pieces that are disconnected from my true authentic self, from my authentic self rooted on the holy earth and connected to the holy heavens.
So what would you say to someone who's starting out just trying to get out of their, comfort zones and go into nature, right?
Ooh.
And when they do it, they're like, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is awkward. I don't like this. But knowing that this is good for me, that I need to be stiff-necked when it comes to this, right?
So what works for me, I can't speak for everyone, but what works for me, and you could maybe modulate this to work for you, is I find my nearest accessible nature, be it a park, a forest, a hike, and I go there preferably alone, because if you want to get to know yourself, it's the same formula if I wanted to get to know a good friend.
Right.
As we spend time alone, get to know each other. If I want to get to know myself, we have to spend some good time alone, get to know each other. And so I go to some beautiful nature by myself, preferably with some water there, but it doesn't have to be. And over there, what works for me is I first just start humming. Just allowing in my inner world to come out in some way. And then I could add a little bit of vocalizations. All of a sudden, there's a outpouring of my heart, an outpouring of my soul. And as I'm moving throughout nature, I'll feel more of myself invited to come and express. Oh, yo, 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 na, na, yo, na, yo, we, na, yo, yo, yo. Oh, yo, 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 yo. And it doesn't have to be complex. Actually, the simpler, the better. You could hold one note and just take one note and go, ooh. Ooh. And then you can invite a second note. Ooh. Back to the first. Just allow your soul to feel, allow your soul to express, allow your self to flow outward. Because we're often attacking ourselves, looking at ourselves through the imagined mirror of everyone else's eyes. How are they looking at me? What do they say about me? Am I doing right? Am I good enough? Am I not good enough? Am I living up to my own standard that I want for myself? Get out of the self-destructive, self-directed perspective and start allowing the wellspring from your inner core to start moving outward.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
You okay if we go a little deep?
Yalla.
Do you remember when you first started really connecting to who you truly are? When you first started that process? What was that like? And was it difficult? Do you have memories of it?
So, in a deep way, when I started learning Chassidut, which is the deepest, yet simplest, yet deepest, yet simplest, yet deepest mysteries of the Torah. I remember actually walking back and forth in the parking lot of my yeshiva in New Haven with a mentor of mine.
Okay.
For the first time in my life, as a 14, 15-year-old boy, all the emotions that I had blocked, all the emotions that I had like bottled up after a crazy divorce that I experienced as a child, struggling with trying to fit in and making friends and all of it. I remember just like bawling my eyes out to a mentor. And I was wondering, like, why now? Why didn't this stuff ever bother me? Why does my misalignments never bother me up until now? I realized I was learning Chassidus. I was diving into Chassidut, the deepest soulful stuff. When you touch the heart of the Torah, when you touch the soul of the Torah, it touches your heart and soul. And from that place, in the beginning, it's like going to a house that hasn't been used for a couple of years, you know? You go to a house that hasn't been used for a couple of years and you first turn on the faucet. Ooh. Ugh, all the muck, all the schmutz.
Right.
They say in Yiddish, blotte. Blotte is mud.
Right.
All the blotte starts coming out.
It's not a pretty word.
Oh, no. But if you give it the space, if you don't try to bottle it back up, but if you give it the space to come out through good talks with friends or solo adventures into nature or music or whatever your expressive medium is.
So what you say when you started this journey of self-discovery when you were 14, 15 with a mentor, how many years did that continue until you truly felt comfortable in your skin?
Oh, dude, 18, 19, I came to Eretz Israel, I came to the Holy Land. And that's really when it really opened up. When it really opened up, because then even this Chassidut that I learned, it got rooted and embodied in our sacred soil. I came home, I was walking through the streets of Yerushalayim. All of a sudden, I knew my place in life. Going from like a guy who just like, okay, learning Torah, learning this. I was already ordained as a rabbi. But I was like back on our earth, man. Back on our sacred soil, back in our place. This is my place. And then part of the continuum of one of the most, maybe the most incredible story in history. The people who have been battered and attacked by every superpower to ever exist here manifest back in our home, on our land, with our people, celebrating and experiencing the difficult times together and experiencing the joys together. All of a sudden, I truly found my place. And my place is not just an individual story. The true me isn't just Shalom Lebowitz. The true me is Shalom as a part of my family, as a part of my tribe, as a part of my people, my nation, and the greater part as a citizen of this beautiful earth.
So you say you felt like you were part of something much bigger than just yourself.
And the lamplit streets of Jerusalem and the cobblestones and the songs coming out of the sacred corners, and then coming to Tzfat and seeing what a holy city is that's still fully held within its holiness.
So being in Israel, in a way, was your cocoon.
Oh, man.
And was able, you were able to evolve into a shalom fly, a shalom butterfly.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Maybe we'll make sure out of that.
No, I'm down with it. Shalom fly. The shalom fly came out of this crazy cocoon of like, again, it's the difference between, am I attacking self? Is it self-directed attention? Or is it from the core of my being moving outward to the world?
Do you ever feel that sometimes it can get mixed up? The Sadiq.
Speaking of, the little tzaddik's calling for me.
Okay.
Brachot, dear friends, I want to just bless this space and bless anyone that's listening to this, that you should have the capacity to focus on what truly matters, and you should be stiff-necked and stubborn for holy purposes.
And that you should have a child that cries for you, for their Abba, Bezrat Hashem, in the right time.
Amen.